All right. So introduction. I'm a consultant by day and do a whole bunch of other crap at night, including being the lead developer for PoshSec and co-founder. I'm a member of MySec. You might see those shirts around or hear about us, and spend a lot of time in the first week in June helping at B-Sides Detroit wrangle people up and make sure they make it to their talks. I'm a Rats and Rogue podcast member, so go ahead and download it. We should be in iTunes soon. I'm also a Christian, husband, father, and a whole bunch of other things when I'm not in front of a computer. So, little disclaimer, this is a bunch of examples. You're not going to be able to take a lot of this and exactly directly use it. It's a lot of theoretical stuff, but there is some code in there that you can use. Doesn't reflect my employer or Microsoft or anything I say in here, because sometimes I put my opinions in here, even though Microsoft probably doesn't like that. And then all my stuff's as is. So let's go into some general info. Why this talk? Well, you hear in the halls and stuff like that, you'll hear a lot of people talking about Python and Ruby as their tools of choice. Mine is PowerShell. There's nothing wrong with those other languages, but the PowerShell is what I'm using. I've done a lot of defensive talks before. PoshSec is a very defensive tool, but I wanted to change it up a little bit and then spread the love of PowerShell, because it actually is really awesome. So what this talk won't tell you to do is how to get shell. There's millions of ways to do that, millions of tutorials online to do that. That's not what I do, and I'm not going to show you how to write PowerShell. I'm going to go over a little bit of stuff, but overall, it's not going to, you're not going to be a PowerShell wizard when you're done here. So a little primer in PowerShell. There's a couple file types that you'll generally deal with. One of them is PS1. That's a lot of the files that you'll deal with. But also the other two file types up there, PSD1 and PSM1, are module files. So as you'll download things like PoshSec or PowerSploit, you'll have these files that are included in there to help it absorb stuff that you write or other people write into PowerShell. Variables are generally the $ name like in other languages, so that shouldn't be a big shock to a lot of people. Then .NET calls. This PowerShell has direct access to .NET, so you can use basically anything in the .NET library inside your scripts, and this is one of the ways to do it. There are other ways to do it as well. And then execution policies. Basically, this is to keep generally people from kind of do something stupid on their computer. It's not a security feature whatsoever, but it's just to kind of, if you get a file off the internet, you can't just straight away run it. You can, but by default you can't. So there's the couple ones that I use are remote signed and bypassed. Remote signed requires that anything you download from the internet be signed unless you unlock it and do a whole bunch of unlock it basically. And then bypass ignores all this stuff. So it doesn't have to be signed, it can be signed, it doesn't really matter. It'll just run. So you'll see a lot of examples of that around there on the internet using the bypass stuff. So basically the tools at our disposal, PowerShell, .NET, and then Windows. So it's pretty straightforward and simple. These things all play very nicely together. So we're going to go into our scenario now. So you've obtained a shell on a Windows machine, and you have some decent credentials, domain admin, whatever. Didn't want to use third-party tools, kind of just wanted to see what I could do or what you could do without having to download something or use other utilities. And then I wanted to see what was available. So that's the whole premise of this talk. So part of the scenario is that you've set this up, you started doing this before, and you have a couple script files that you've set up previously so that you have all the information or whatever that you want to attain from your target. And we have internet access. It's the perfect world. So we'll give ourselves that. And so we're going to have all our information. We need to get it back to ourselves somehow, and the cloud could be involved or not. So in very simple terms, this is just my brain thinking is that post-exploitation involves these three things, more or whatever, depending on what's going on: information gathering, data exfiltration, and persistence. So we'll cover those three areas coming up. So some of the stuff that you could have access to while you're doing this are users and groups, files, databases, Exchange, SharePoint. The sky's the limit. If it's on the network, you could have access to it. So we're going to go through some stuff that you can pull and grab and take off with you. So we're going to start with information gathering. So information gathering, this is a lot of stuff that sysadmins use. That's basically a lot. This is what this is. Stuff that you would use, getting the services on your computer, getting the installed programs, version of Flash, stuff like that. All this stuff is a lot of sysadmin work, but that's, a lot of the information gathering can be that way. So there's some technologies we can use, like WMI. There's the sky's the limit with that. Services and disk information or processes, the whole nine yards. ADSI is a Active Directory interface, because I don't want to use another tool, which I kind of can think that there's an Active Directory module that's kind of an extra tool. It may not always be available. ADSI is always available if you have PowerShell, so that's one less thing you have to worry about. Then the built-in PowerShell commands and some .NET. So I'm going to show some code examples here of things that you can grab and you can get using PowerShell. Some of it's straightforward, some of it looks a little convoluted, but it's not overly horrible. So the first one up there is to get the Windows operating system version, and this is using a .NET call. There's other ways to do it. This was just an example that I could show you. You can use .NET to do this. You can get the list of the drives. How about a list of every AD user? And the thing with all of these three things, you can be a regular user, so you don't even have to be elevated to grab all this information. So it doesn't take much to do. So your users could be running this and getting all your Active Directory names or stuff like that. You also, local users, also I find very helpful to grab. So this is using ADSI as well. This is it's a little convoluted. I don't like this the way that that's all set up. So this can be a pain in the butt until you figure out what you're doing. And then services, always good to grab some services. So I'm going to run a little demo here, and we'll see what info I can. I wrote a script to grab a whole bunch of data here. So let's. So this script that is available on my GitHub that you can download doesn't follow one of the best practices of not using this thing called write host, because it doesn't write that stuff to a file. But this is just basically to show you all this information on a system that I can grab. SIDs, you can grab paths to the profiles that are on the computer, the service names with their executables, all the stuff that you can do. It's real simple to grab, and then you have all the stuff to be able to go further with what you need to do. So, and since this is a VM with not a lot, there's only going to be like 2 computers, or 2 softwares installed, piece softwares. It's not showing. There we go. Let's see. So basically, this is just a whole bunch of information that I can gather that is all readily available, and none of it you need actually have admin rights to be able to grab. So the script itself is pretty straightforward, especially if you start using PowerShell, but a lot of this stuff that you can cobble together from information on the internet, or if you've done VB script before, or generally familiar with some stuff like WMI or other technologies. And PowerShell, the wonderful thing is it's kind of like it is a programming language basically, so that there's things in there like if statements to make sure that you can check and do various stuff. So this is just stuff that you can grab real simple and export all that data out for you. So let's talk about exfiltration real quick. So I created a whole bunch of, I ran that script, or I have a different various scripts that I run, and I have all this data in text files. Yeah, it's, probably not great that you're writing stuff to disk, but this is a simple way to zip up your files. There's not really out of the box on some systems, a default way to zip up via PowerShell. This is actually so you can do it, but there's things like make cab or other things that you can use to zip your files up so you can get it off the system. So one of the things that when I was doing this, I was like, well, okay, so if I'm on there and I don't want to get caught, I don't want to see the zip file that's shooting out there, I'm like, well, how am I going to get it out? So one of the ways that I was thinking is that you can encode the file, break it up into little chunks, and send it out via various ways. So it just looks like some encrypted text where we can all expand it on the remote system, put it together, and bring it in there. Carlos Perez has a good way to encode commands. This is actually the command to encode. It'll give me a base 64 string of the results of the logical disk out there, so it's not so the text can be sent different ways without looking like regular traffic. So this, I was playing around, and I was playing with Star Wars Old Republic, big gamer. So this is actually the install log in base 64 of Star Wars Old Republic, which is, I was just messing around and needed a screenshot for my slides. So basically, I converted this all over to a base 64 file, and then I took this base 64 code, sent it over to another system, and I wrote a function to just make it easier to reassemble things back into a file. So at the top of this, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I basically give the name of the output file and pass it this base 64 string, and it'll repackage the item back onto your system. So just a general way. So if you leak this out a little bit at a time, you could reassemble this whole thing. One quick note about this way, when you do reassemble it, there's an 8100 character limit, so your large files you're not going to really be able to do. It's a big, you'll get a warning that doesn't work. It does work sometimes, but overall it doesn't work. And then there's a KB article that references this. This is like harps back to the command prompt days and why that still exists. So I'm going to run another demo of kind of this scenario. All right, so I have a file that I named the data.zip because I'm stealthy as all hell, and it's in my there's the data file. So basically, in there's just accounts and services. It's 2 text files, nothing really major, but just as an example in here. So it's in this file called the data. So I'm going to take the data and I'm going to actually convert it over to base 64, and this is what it essentially looks like. And this will take a second to run since I don't have a powerful machine. So. Yeah, it's a function just to, it's some of Perez's code, just I changed a couple things. Yeah, but you can do this basically with .NET calls, like in the previous slide that I had, so it's not like hard, it's just, this is just easier for me to do and like kind of steps. So then, you're just going to imagine that we're on a whole nother system right now, and we have this base64 string. So the string that we just had, and this is another custom function that I wrote that you give the output and the string for the base64, and it reassembles it. And then this will take a second to run, and then we're going to just open up the zip. I'm going to open up a zip file, the output.zip, to show you that these files are back on here. So technically you can do this with anything. I've done it with executables, like really small executables. But you could do this various different ways. So, and if I open up one of these files, it's all put back the way it's supposed to. So it's kind of a nice way to do this, even though writing to disk is not always, the best thing. So let's talk a little bit about persistence real quick. You can add users. This is to add a local user. There's so much code out there to add yourself as an admin or create a domain user. This is just really quick, simple ADSI stuff. The description's always fun to set on these, but if you can add users. One of the big things is PowerShell Remoting is, this is where it gets kind of fun, is that this is all technically, you have access to all these systems based through remoting, especially after 2012, is when remoting's turned on by default. So this is kind of like SSH for Windows, except that it just accepts me because I already have credentials onto that system. So I can grab a remote information, I can scan your whole network with some code that'll go through and pull all this information across your entire network. And it'll just look like regular admin traffic. You won't even be able to distinguish that this is going on. You can send files through remoting. You can do tons of different stuff with remoting. And even before 2012, if you have a decent sysadmin nowadays on Windows and he's into PowerShell, it's probably enabled already on your network. So it's on the network. So it's nice to use when it's there. So you can also run jobs against it so that you can set things up at a specific time and it'll still remote out and do all the stuff and pull back. So you don't have to basically worry about trying to get on other systems when it's already technically there. So let's put our tool together. And basically, I did some of this in the demo, but we're going to collect the data. I'm going to send it to a text file. We're then just going to encode our stuff. We're going to invoke FTP uploads on my site that you can download, but that's one way to get it out. There's other ways you can get it out. So we're going to move the file, and then on our on our system, we're going to bring the file back together. So, and you can all do this inside of like PowerShell. You can automate this whole thing, and which is what's wonderful about it. And perfect. So there's different ways to craft our tools. Scripts and functions are the big two ways that I've done it. Modules, which are like add-ons like PoshSec or PowerSploit, that they can be a pain sometimes to download and configure to make sure it works on your system. So I tend to stay away from those. But scripts and functions, there's examples out there. Chris Campbell had an example where he put some code up on Twitter and interacted with PowerShell to pull down the commands he wanted to run. So it was like one of the really cool things that you could do. But functions, just little chunks of code here, like the exfil data stuff that I wrote, and all that are just functions. So they're small, just chunks of code that you can reuse anywhere, and they're easy to paste over because it's just text. So it's kind of nice. But script files, one of the things you could do is you could put it on a website and download and run all in one command, and it's really trivial to do. So especially with the bypass command, so it's kind of nice. So basically, you're going to run your stuff once you've created your tool, and there's a few ways. PowerShell, Metinterpreter. There's other ways you want to run. You can run PowerShell. Is good. There's a couple switches that you'll probably see in other PowerShell talks or examples online that you want to throw in there so that it doesn't cloud your view, but also make sure it runs. So basically this, the ones you want is like encoded command. So not only can I make base64 commands or files, but I can encode these commands so all it looks like on Twitter or on a file on a website are just base64, and I can parse those and run it without issue. The execution policies, see, I talked before, you can bypass so that then none of the restrictions for downloading stuff off the internet and running are there, and then no logo and no profile, just to make sure that everything's nice and clean when you run it. So up there's an example of the PowerShell with the no logo and an encoded command so that you can see what it would look like. But you can see tons of examples of this on the internet. So, this is a function that I wrote to kind of do the where I have a script file, say, up on my website, and all it does is download the file and execute it. So I can host it up on anywhere that I have access, and it'll just go out and grab the PowerShell file and execute it on the system. So I can just drop this on the system that I'm on, and then just pull the internet and run the stuff without issue. So it's a nice little easy way to do it without having to remember all the commands. Ignore the function name, that's not in PowerShell standards. So, but the one on my GitHub site has the correct function name. Yeah, I'm getting crap from it. That's all right. It's horrible. So you can, like I said before, you copy paste. You can upload to FTP server. You can whatever way you get your data out. That's one of the things that I'm not covering. But if you can get those chunks of base64 out and reassemble them, then all your data goes out. One of the ways you could do this is with bits transfers. So the same thing that Windows updates use, you can go out and pull all this information or send this information with bits. So it's one of the nice things that you can do. I didn't have time to get that all done, so I have some stuff on my website that'll be going up that has this bits transfer stuff all down in nice little packages to be able to do that. So before I take questions, there's a couple things I want to talk to you about. One of them is PoshSec. This was a module started by myself and a gentleman named Will Steele. Unfortunately, Will passed on Christmas Eve last year. And this was his vision to kind of take PowerShell and marry it with InfoSec and the defensive side, which is where I spend most of my day. So you can go out there. There's a collection of audit scripts right now. There's port information that you can pull, and this is all with PowerShell. So it does require a little bit PowerShell knowledge to get and use and install, but I welcome people providing feedback, using it. You can download it on GitHub, just search for PoshSec. But one of the big things at DerbyCon this weekend was something that Ben 10 released yesterday in his talk. And this is basically so that people who don't want to get up on PowerShell but want to use the stuff that we're putting out there under PoshSec and make the bar to entry so much lower. So Ben built this wonderful thing we're calling the PoshSec Framework, which takes and slaps a GUI on top of our stuff, but it's not just a GUI, it does so much more. This is like just amazing. You can have warnings triggered on there. It can there's a port monitoring script that Ben wrote, and we have it up there, and it'll actually tell you, which is down here in the example down here, things that are hitting your system. And this is just things that we can do to make you guys, help you guys, but also help do a bunch of auditing, stuff like that. The nice thing is this Ben built this so it can suck in pretty much any PowerShell code out there. So grab your favorite PowerShell module and stuff and stick it out there, which is cool. There's tons of features. There should be a compiled version. Currently, the PoshSec Framework's on our GitHub repository. It's not compiled, but it will be compiled at some point in the next couple days. By the end of the day. And we'll be up there so you can download it. All you have to do is download and extract, and it'll work. So it doesn't require you to do anything special. So, and then as we release updates to PoshSec, because we're working on new versions coming up, you can update the commandlets, our stuff, to get more functionality as we go along. The final release, or the 1.0 release of the framework, will be at B-Side Chicago next year, along with some other stuff for PoshSec. So I encourage you guys to download and take a look at this. Some special thanks, the top 3 guys in here, people I look up to in the PowerShell space. Their stuff's awesome. So if you're PowerSploit, PoshSec mod by Carlos Perez, but their blog posts, their stuff is just top notch. Then there's the PoshSec team, the guys that I work with on actually almost daily basis now with doing PoshSec work. And then Derek and Josh from MySec, they help me with some of the stuff for my talks, so I want to give them a shout out. So here's my info. You guys got questions? Want to ridicule me? You know, I'm good. Yeah.
Is that PoshSec Framework GUI written in PowerShell as well?
No, it's written in C#. So you probably could write it in PowerShell. Yeah, but this is all C#. It's when I saw it, I was blown away. So all the stuff that's around it, it's really cool. You guys should check that out. I've not seen that technique, but you probably could. You probably have to tinker around with it, but you might be able to do that without issue. Just probably would have to build a little more complicated scripts, but if there's like a way you can call like a function or utility to be able to do that, you can do that all with PowerShell. Yeah, through .NET, yes. So you can do all that. So, any other questions? All right, well, thanks.